Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Josh. I'm going to be your presenter today. Welcome to everybody who's joining us. The crux of the webinar here today is ultimately the church is responsible for filing and retaining copies of important tax forms and reports. Okay? Forms like your quarterly 941 form, W-2s, W-3s for your employees, 1099s and 1096s for your independent contractors. If you have state forms that you are obligated to file for state taxes, you're responsible for those as well, okay? And essentially, the church is responsible for keeping records of all tax forms and documents, all right? We're the company that simply provides the payroll program for you to calculate and pay your employees and be able to generate the forms to either file, send in, and print and send in, or to e-file through Atrix, our partner vendor. Okay. The reason why this webinar became important, at least I felt like why it was important that we do this. I mean, I'm very excited to do it because it's a very common support question. But what happens is we get calls from users all the time asking if they can get copies of tax forms and documents from prior years and periods. Okay. And even in our old version of Church Windows Payroll that was rendered obsolete at the end of 2022, it didn't only retain the current year's forms only and did not save prior year's forms. Sure, you could get reports that included all the totals, but the forms themselves were always replaced with whatever the most current form was, whether that was the 941 form or the W-2s or the W-3 or 1099 forms. So even the old payroll. So to make the long story short, this is why we actually, one of the reasons why we partnered with our tax form provider now, Atrix eFile, okay? They are now our forms provider partner for Church Windows, with Church Windows that came into effect at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, or end of 2022, beginning of 2023. Because they update the forms, became very tedious and cumbersome for us to do that, okay? Small company here just outside of Columbus, Ohio, and they do it so much better, and they do retain copies of your forms, okay, provided the form processing is complete, okay? So if the forms and document processing is completed successfully in Atrix, those forms and documents will be available for you to review later. Now, there are things that are caveats that go along with that, but I'll talk about that momentarily, okay? So essentially, but what I'm talking about in the broader picture is the church's responsibility to ensure that you have access to those or that you have the forms available. Okay, so if you get a call from or a letter from the IRS, and I've had a couple in the past few weeks about users who say, "Oh, I got this letter from the IRS that said they never got our, X quarter 941 form from 2021." Okay, and here it is, 3-4 years later, and they're basically going, "How do I get that?" Well, in most cases, folks, that's unavailable. You can, again, run the reports in Church Windows Payroll that generates the totals that you need, but the form itself is typically unavailable until 2023 when we started implementing our relationship with Atrix, okay? But even then, the form processing must be complete. All right, so first of all, when you process the forms themselves, Atrix lets you print a copy of the form itself for your records copy. They call it the record copy. It doesn't matter whether it's the 941 form, W-2s, W-3 form, well, W-3, but the W-2s, there's the church's or employer's copy of that. W-3, you should keep a copy of it, but you should keep copies of all of those, all right? I'm not typically one to advocate printing and using paper for much of anything in Church Windows, but if there is anything that I strongly advocate for, it is absolutely printing and putting in file folders the tax forms for at least the 4 to 5 most recent years. I believe that the IRS's requirement is that you have to keep at least the 4 most recent years of payroll documents and forms, all right? Some of you may keep them longer. It's your choice entirely, okay? So let's go through a process real quick. So when I'm talking about the processing of the form, I mean that if I go through the report of, say, running my tax forms, and I bring up my tax forms list here, and it takes a second here. Sorry, folks. It's generating the tax forms list. So right here, my quarterly 941 form, let's choose it for quarter 2. Let's click print. It says, here's my tax deposits. Yes, I'm not here to verify that. I'm here to show you where and how that processing becomes complete in Church Windows. Now, of course, whether you're e-filing or whether you're printing and mailing the forms, you still should retain a copy of that. I know Atrix makes those available to you, okay? So here we are loading our second quarter 941 form. It says complete the red fields. So I have to choose the appropriate information, box 16. I put in my name information, I put in my title, and then I put in a phone number. All right, and then now I'm ready to go to next step, and it prompts me about the change of address, missing information. What am I missing? Oh, no, there's nothing there. Oh, it's 1 cent. So we're going to make the adjustment here on line 1 for 1 penny, and sure enough, that took care of it. So let's go to next step. What am I missing here? Oh, a digit on my phone number. There we go. All right, next step, it now jumps over to agree my copy. Again, when you're printing the form, you simply have to click print here under my copy. And let me get out my highlighter here to steer some focus. Here is I'm talking about up here, folks, at the very top. You see on the yellow, I say on my calls all the time, in the yellow banner across the top, it tells you where you are. Okay? So there, I'm on my copy. So if I print that and I send that to my printer by using the print button at the top, it's going to say record copy on that. But either way, I've got a copy of it. So if I need to reproduce it, I can. Then when I've printed my copy, right, I click print, I send that to my printer, okay, and then I close, and then I go to next step. I then just close, and it jumps me over to federal copy, and I can choose either print or e-file. E-filing is not required at this point. You can still print and send in the 941, but so I would click print on that, and again, it opens up my printer option. I've got it set, folks, to go to a Microsoft Print to PDF, and then it says, did you complete processing the report? This comes up, folks, every single time you're producing forms, tax forms in Church Windows, payroll, or accounting through Atrix. So if I click yes on that response, Atrix saves this report and the date and time I did it. And I'm going to show you where we access that, okay? So it now takes me back to my home page for my tax forms. And right here in the upper right, everybody can see this here, history, view in progress or completed reports, right there, okay? And that's what we're looking at. That's where you access all of those completed forms. So when we bring that up, now folks, I've got a bunch in here because I've done a lot of webinars and have done various forms in a variety of formats for over the course of the years. But notice here, you've got the name of the form down the left side. You've got what type it is, so it's whether it's the W-2 or 1099s. Is it federal or state document, right? So and then if there is a state involved, and notice I had one down here for Wisconsin for whatever reason, if applicable, and the period that the report was for, what the status of the report is it a record copy? Is it a draft? Is it printed and mailed? Was it e-filed? If you e-file with Atrix, it will put e-file in that status box, okay? And it'll say click for viewing details, and it'll tell us the date that it was saved. Really, really handy, but it really only is effective for you if you actually complete the processing of the form, okay? So right here, notice here's the one I just did just now for my print and email of Q2 for 2024, 9/19, today's date at 12:10 p.m., and here we are a couple minutes ago on that. So if I needed to access that again, I can come into this list, click on that, check that, and click View and Print, and it allows me to go back in and reprint the document. Okay. I looked on the Atrix website, and I think they said they keep forms as long as you keep them. Okay. I mean, I think that you will want to come in and remove or purge those out periodically, but certainly after, 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years, whatever your choice is, you might want to clear out this list. Okay. But if I click View and Print, it'll go back into the form again and allow me to reprint that 941 form. Okay. So that's option number 1 after we're now hoping everybody here is going to be saving, at least printing hard copies of their forms to keep in a folder locally. So if you have those, in a folder somewhere in a file drawer, you don't have to come in here and access this. Okay, this is just another extra layer of protection for ensuring that you have access to those important forms should you absolutely need it. Sure, if there's something disastrous happens, there's a fire at the church or something, and the actual hard copy forms are destroyed, then this becomes very, very important to access those. Okay, but I'm going to walk through one more after that as well. But again, you have to find the appropriate form. So let's say I wanted to go back in and reprint the form for, say, Q quarter 2 of 2023. All right. Again, printed and mailed, but it never got received or something like that. I highlight it. I click View and Print. It now attempts to access or print the form. Okay. So it takes a second. Now, an important message is going to come up here. All right. It says right here in the middle, and I can't stress this enough, this report is using an older version of the form, so it cannot be e-filed. Their system will not e-file a form that is that old. Okay? I can click OK on that, and I can still print the form, and if the government didn't receive it, you can absolutely print this and send this in. And we would advise you do. Might be important for you to contact somebody who's qualified to verify that, a CPA or somebody, qualified tax person. But I can now click OK on that and absolutely reprint this form. And as we can see here at the top of the form, it says Atrix revised version number right here, revised on July 28th of 2023. So that's the date from this form, and here we are now in September of 2024. So this is clearly an outdated form. All right. Let me look at my report here that I've got that I wrote up about this. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about there is you just have to pay attention, folks, to the messages as they're coming up. All right. So also, when prompted to redo something, right, if I close out of this and go back here, if I go back to my back to my history list. If I go back and say choose 2023, notice that down the left-hand side here, sure, I can do my 2023 W-2s, W-3s, 941X reports, but nowhere in here is a 941 Schedule B, 941 form, okay? So I can't even go in and recreate a form for 2023 or any prior year earlier than this year, even in Atrix. So the history becomes really, really important, assuming that processing is complete. So please make sure you're completing the processing of those forms and don't close out of it, because when you say yes to that completion, it automatically takes you back to this page. And you probably should go into the history list and make sure that form with respective date and timestamp on it of when you completed it is there. Okay? Really important. If you need to amend or edit something, you can go into the history list and you can click edit. But there certainly will be, if you e-filed with Atrix, you can't edit anything, folks. If you need to do an amendment or something, you'll have to come into the forms list here and you'll have to go to the respective year and choose the X form, like 941X or the W2C or W3C, something in there, and submit or file that amendment that way. Okay, but if you've got other forms in there, you may be able to edit them, okay, to resubmit them if you need to. So if I come in right here and choose, say, I'll try this here, but look at there, I've got 2021 W2, W3 from 2 years ago. So if I click on that and click edit, it's going to bring up the option here, I believe, that says, ask me what I want to do with that. Or is it's going to take me back to the grid? Oh, no, here it is. W-2 history options. So it tells me it was printed on December 19th of 2022. Okay, do I want to correct the completed W-2s? Do I want to e-file or print incomplete W-2s? Do I want to reprint completed, or do I want to start over? Okay, but I'm not sure I can start over here because those forms are, that form is not, if I'm not mistaken, is not available. Okay, or if you e-filed, you can look up your password with them as well. You have to pay attention to what these are, folks. Okay, what's in here. All right, but again, if you've got hard copy records, and with only a few minutes left here, there's one other thing I want to talk about, okay? And this is an option which is perhaps preferred, okay? In addition to printing the hard copies, and in addition to history, the history list that's in Atrix, if there, you may also choose to export these reports in a digital format, like such as a PDF file. Okay, for, again, record-keeping purposes only. And if we choose to do that, all right, let's go back into our history and let's go, oh, I want to do that for my 941 form that I just did for quarter 2. So right here's my quarter 1, 941 for quarter 2. I can click View and Print. And I could create and print another hard copy of it if I wish, all right? But I also can go up to Print here, and I can choose to export it, changing it to something like Microsoft Print to PDF, okay? And when I click OK through that, it now opens up and asks me where I want to save this file, this PDF document, right? So I've got it right here under this PC under my documents. I can call this, say, 2024 Q2 941 form and click Save. And it's in a PDF, okay? So that is now saved in a PDF format that I can access in its location, okay? And I know some folks, we probably have a handful of Church Windows web users that are attending our event today too, and you can save these documents as well, okay? Whether you're on RDI or Cloud9 or Summit, you can save the documents into a location on any one of those server platforms, and then ultimately move the file over down to your local machine to put on a flash drive or something else. Okay, but if you put them into a folder on like Summit's desktop, they'll get backed up as part of the, of whatever Summit has with you there. But I would want a hard copy locally. Okay, so I can do that for W-2s as well. Anytime you get that print option, you go right down here and choose under your printer name, choose whatever PDF writer or converter you have in the list. Virtually everybody has Microsoft Print to PDF, and it will automatically, when you click OK with that, give you the option to choose where you want to save it. And that's true for every form, okay, folks? And this is true in accounting as well. So for your form 1099s and 1096s that are printed and processed through, say, accounting, if you're paying and processing your 1099s there as well, you can also back those up, print them, access them through the history page in accounting as well, not just payroll, all right? But the only tax forms that are generated or produced or processed in accounting are the 1099s and 1096 at this time. I'm not aware of any other forms that we'll be adding, okay? But folks, these documents, in order to, you're going to call me, and you're going to say, hey, Josh, how do I access those forms? And I'm going to say, did you check in the Atrix, history list? Are they there? If it's there, you can access it. If you can't, there's, if it's not in that list, there's nothing to process. You can try going back and looking in the forms list and seeing if they're there, but if they're not, they cannot be generated again. Okay? So like data backups for the software, retaining some access to the forms themselves for your peace of mind, folks, is vitally, vitally important. I cannot stress this enough. These are irreplaceable and often cannot be duplicated. All right? I would probably do all three. I would make sure they're in the history list. I would print hard copies, and I would save them as PDF files every time. So I know that I've got myself extra backed up with regards to those tax forms and those tax documents. So please, folks, take on some of this information and make sure that you're saving these, because it'll save a phone call to us. And I may not have an answer that you want to hear, if depending on the age of the document that you're trying to find. So I really hope this helps today, folks. I know we went about 2 or 3 minutes long, so I hope the event has been helpful, but that is where I'm going to leave the event for today.